Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 9-game Major League Baseball slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? I hope the sound is okay. I got a new mic. Hopefully it works okay. If there's any issues with it, please leave a comment below. Let me know. With that said, if we look at weather today, we really don't have much weather issues for this slate, so that's good. The Pittsburgh Mets game, probably the riskiest game on the slate, but there's really not much there. And so I think this is a pretty good slate from a weather perspective. Pretty much all the games are similar or in domes, so that definitely gives us a lot. We don't have to worry about it too much today. With that said, the pitching is pretty good today, so we're going to have some high-scoring games. It looks like. As for there are some low-end pitchers today. If we're looking at the top games, we're definitely going to look at that Atlanta Houston game was a very uh, stackable game. So also the Arizona Chicago Cubs game has some of that, and even the late game of the Dodgers and Nationals has some upside from that perspective. But all the games are actually pretty tight, with the exception of two games kind of in the middle. The St. Louis game and the Cincinnati game, they both have pretty low totals for the slate. So we're definitely going to want to look at pitching potentials there and things like that. But overall, we do have a really good slate here. So I think this is going to be a high scoring one. I think there's a lot of teams that we can stack today. And this looks like a good slate overall in general. The only thing I don't like is that the late game is at 10 o'clock and the slate starts, right early at 7. So hopefully we get all the lineups in before lock, but that would be a little bit annoying for GPP plays, especially. But overall, it's a solid slate. So let's go and get our pitchers here. We have two pitchers that I think are top options, and then we have a bunch of GPP options. First will be Glasnow. Now he's the top over play on the slate. It's not close. He's got the best strikeout rate. In fact, he's really the only guy that I think gets more than 6 strikeouts today on this entire slate, and that gives him a lot of upside. He's really the only guy that has 30 fantasy point potential today, or at least a good chance of it. And so he looks like a great play. He's also been pretty solid to start the season. He had a first game that was a little bit rough. He's also got the best matchup today against Washington. So he just looks fantastic overall. I expect him to get a lot of strikeouts. I don't necessarily think 14 strikeouts, but maybe somewhere between 8 and 12, I think, is probably where he ends up landing. And that should be a 30 fantasy point game or better. However, Washington has had some good games occasionally, but this is just a juicy matchup for him. Looking at Frankie Montas for Cincinnati, he's the other guy that I think has a lot of utility today. Now he's quite a bit cheaper, almost $2,000 cheaper than Glasnow, but the matchup here gives him some upside. I wish his K rate was a little bit better for the price, but he has one of the better matchups on this entire slate, and so I think he's a viable option. Then we have several GPP plays, and Kelly and Kirby. I'll talk about those two guys first. Both of these guys are kind of they have good matchups, and their K rates are okay. I wish they were better, and I wish that their matchups were a little bit better, but they do have some good contrarian potential today in that price range. Musgrove, Gray, Lugo, and Bassett all in this row here. Um, all have utility today. They're all risky though, and so I don't love them. I'm gonna note that Crochet is not the starter for the White Sox. They currently don't have a pitcher picked so far, so we can't say exactly who they're going to run. But they are facing Kansas City, so I imagine it's not going to be the best option. But with Musgrove, Gray, Lugo, and Bassett, these are all really good GPP plays today. I think Gray is the best one because he has the best matchup. The problem with all four of these guys is that their strikeout rate is lower than I'd like for a solid second option, and so I can't really make them the good second tier option, but they are GPP plays. I think Bassett is probably the riskiest because he's against the Yankees, so he has more strikeout potential there, as he did well against them in the past. And Musgrove is probably one of the riskier options as well because he's had a rough go against Milwaukee in the past and to start the season. So they're really good GPP plays, but they definitely have some risk. Uh, Moving down a little bit farther, and the best, then we find Gill for the Yankees. Now he's got a tough matchup against Toronto, but he does have one of the best strikeout rates of any guy under $8,000, and that gives him some potential today. The matchup isn't great, but he can score over 15 fantasy points in this game, and that could be a good option at this price range. but he definitely carries some risk because Toronto does have some good hitters. But I do think, if you wanted to stack Toronto, you would want to stack up the righties here. But I think that he's going to be an interesting option and has some and is a little bit safer than some of the other guys that are less expensive than him. Pretty much below that, we just run out of strikeouts. I mean, there's just not many guys that have a lot of strikeout potential other than maybe Brown for uh, Chicago Cubs, but I don't think that's a really great option today. So with that said, that's what I have for pitchers. I didn't really find too many extreme GPP plays because the upside on some of these guys are really low. I'm definitely going to stack up the Dodgers, Atlanta, St. Louis, and Arizona in stacks because they have the best potential from that perspective. But I also like Houston and Pittsburgh a little bit. So from a stacking perspective. Looking at our catchers, our top overall guy is Junior Diaz for Houston. Now, Houston is going to be a popular stack today, and so if you want to be contrarian, you don't want to stack Houston today. But they do have some upside in this one, and Diaz has been solid to start the season and been good fantasy output, and his price is nice and stable, which definitely gives him some potential today. Both Contreras, William Contreras here for the Brewers. He has absolutely been phenomenal to start the season. He's had a freaking monster series against Baltimore, and he looks to continue that here against San Diego. And he gets a pretty good matchup to do more damage here. So he really looks good, but he's a good contrarian option off of Diaz. Wilson Contreras also looks really solid today with a lot of home run potential. So he's definitely somebody that I'm going to consider as an alternate at the same price about as Diaz. And then a couple value plays are Francisco Alvarez, Luis Campazzuno, and Alejandro Kirk. They all have some utility and they're nice and cheap. And if you need to pay down here, this is not a bad place to do it. I think there's going to be a lot of home runs at the catcher position today. And so, these guys all have that potential on the slate. Made our first baseman. I do like Matt Olson as the top overall option. He's been up and down so far to start the year, but he's got really solid metrics here and a lot of home run upside. He has some good home run potential in this one, and he just really knocks off the chart at the top of this position. Vlad Jr. also looks really good for Toronto against the Yankees. Now he has not hit the ball particularly well, but he does have home run potential, and so he's definitely a good contrarian play. And then if you want some value, Pasquanto is going to be a really solid option today. He has been inconsistent to start the year. The batting average isn't great, but in 3 of the last 4 games, he's been in double-digit fantasy points, and I think he can do that today even without a home run, as I think Kansas City is going to be a favorable team, assuming the pitching situation works out and we get the pitching that we expect. Cronenworth is also a good value play, and he's nice and cheap, and he's a good kind of a safety squeeze type option that you could throw in there as a option. So looking at second base, we do have a lot of guys at this position that are pretty expensive that all have upside. That'd be Albies, Altuve, Albies and Altuve, and Mookie Betts. Sorry, I don't know why this got switched here. All 3 of these guys, there's not much I can see too much against any of them. Mookie Betts and Altuve have the best metrics for the slate, and they're pretty tight in that. Altuve obviously a lot less expensive than Betts, so that does give him some potential here. Altuve has been absolutely a monster so far to start the season, so I think he's in a great spot. And if I was going to pick between Altuve and Mets, I'll probably go with Altuve just because he's cheaper and you can pay in there. But as a good alternative, Albies is a good play. But some value-ish plays as Zach Olaf for Oakland, kind of a one-off option, and then Bogarts for San Diego is kind of a one-off option as well if you want to pay down at this position. But if you can find a way to squeeze in Altuve, that's definitely the way I'm probably looking today. Third base, uh, the the guy that jumps off the page to me is going to be Bregman if he plays today. I think he's going to be back. It looks like he'll be back. According to the information, he should be back. So if that's the case, then he's definitely going to be somebody that, at least from a metrics perspective, he jumps off the chart. But we'll have to wait and see that he does draw the start. If he doesn't start, Manny Machado will become the top option at this position as he's played very well and he's got a great matchup here lately. So he's got a good position here. Now, Austin Riley is going to be a contrarian option. I wish his hitting has been a little bit better so far, but he does have that double-digit fantasy potential today, though he is extremely expensive. I didn't really find much other than like Chris Morel for the Cubs that have a lot of potential in this matchup. Obviously, there's going to be some guys in the value range that open up as we get closer to the slate and get the lineups. But right now, there's not much to like at the position outside the top options. Looking at shortstops, obviously Mookie Betts, who I just talked about for the Dodgers, has some potential here as well. Bobby Witt Jr. is virtually same price. I would actually, if I was thinking about using Betts at shortstop, I would probably go with Bobby Witt because he's at the same price and his hitting has just absolutely been phenomenal so far. O'Neal Cruz is a good contrarian option off those guys, but all three of them have a lot of potential today. It's a very top heavy position. Machado also fits in here as well. But then we do have some good value plays at this position, like Willie Adames for Milwaukee, who just has really good metrics today. Kim for San Diego looks really solid on this one, despite the fact that he hasn't hit the ball particularly well. He does have some home run potential today. And then Jeremy Pena is kind of a Hail Mary play, as is RCF for Atlanta. So that Houston Atlanta game definitely very stackable today. Looking at outfielders, my gosh, there's a lot of good outfield options today. Obviously, at the top, we have Acuna Jr., Alvarez, and Corbin Carroll jump off the page as top tier home run potential guys. Kyle Tucker, Juan Soto, and Fernando Tatis are secondary options off those top three, and I think that they have a lot of utility today as well. But if we look at the $4,000 to $5,000 range, I definitely like Michael Harris a lot as a great play. He's a little bit more pricey than I'd like him to be, but he looks like he's got all sorts of great metrics on this slate. And he's going to be somebody that I'm going to try to fit in a lot of places. I'm also liking Ian Happ as a great opportunity to have a good home run day. He really only fits in certain situations. Now, this situation for the Cubs is a little bit risky, but the metrics really jump off the page for him today, as do they for Bellinger. Uh, where is he? At $4,800. I really like his potential today. Now, he has not hit the ball well to start the year, but he's a home run or best type of situation on this one. I really think the Cubs are kind of wonky today because I do like Kelly, the pitcher, against the Cubs, but I really have a hard time not looking as a Cubs stack as being a very contrarian potential today. So do keep that in mind. When it comes to the sub $4,000 range, guys, Jock Peterson, that looks really good today. Starling Marte for the Mets really has some upside in this one. MJ Melendez may be a guy that I try to lock in once we look at what the White Sox are going to throw. And then Jack Sawinski, he fits in today as a value option. And then for the Braves, Jared Kalenic also looks like a really solid option on the slate. Hopefully we get some more, a lot of those guys staying in the lineup today because they all really have good situations here. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have